we are hearing, by the way, Georgia's Secretary of State is on the wires right now saying it is very likely that the Warnock and Herschel Walker contest will be headed for a runoff here. You have to get at least 50% of the vote. So I believe that would happen on December 6th. Melinda, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm talking to my executive producer there. But again, that means that if you're still waiting to see who controls the Senate, it very likely would have to wait until at least then. Back with us, a fellow for whom I have enormous respect, Jim Messina is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff under Barack Obama. Less known, even though those in the media know quite well, he was very instrumental in getting Barack Obama reelected in 2012. That was looking dicey for a while. You might recall, remember that first debate that Barack Obama had with Mitt Romney? You know, a lot of people were sort of breaking into taps at that time for Barack Obama. Hard to believe. I was there in the room that night. Jim turned it around, and he was kind enough to join us again. So good to see you, my friend. Joe Biden is going to address the election. Yesterday at this time, he wasn't. What do you think he'll say?
I think he's going to say good news. You know, last night, really the big winner was democracy. We had the biggest turnout we have seen in a non-presidential election in the history of the country.
Is that right?
Yeah, and that's why the polls were so wrong. They underestimated, you and I have talked about this before, I hate polls, and they were wrong again because they underestimated the Democratic enthusiasm, especially about abortion and the democracy issue.
Yeah, there was a little bit more traction there than we thought, but if you step back, Jim, the results are kind of what we were thinking in the very beginning before there was talk of this red wave. I didn't see a lot of that like 94, even 1980. Yep. Carter and Reagan, and it sort of came to life in the last few days of the race. But what were you seeing?
Well, the interesting thing was the country acted like a presidential year because, you know, Democrats did better in blue states where, you know, there was Republican hopes in New Hampshire, in Colorado, in Washington state. Those were blowout wins. Republicans did really good in red states. Democrats hoped to flip North Carolina. They hoped to flip Ohio, and they just didn't get there because they acted normally. The interesting thing, though, is history. You and I are history buffs, right? What the party elections in the midterms for the president's party usually lose an average of 28 House seats, 4 Senate seats. Democrats clearly overperformed that last night, and it sets up going right at the 2024 election. One more thing. Democrats had a big night that people aren't talking about yet in the governorships. They picked up a bunch of governorships, including in the Midwest. Wisconsin, which was really, really close. They had to have Gretchen Whitmer look dead 6 months ago before the Dobbs decision. She leads a landslide last night. She takes the House, the Senate in Michigan, Minnesota, and then Pennsylvania, of course, last night. So those are big setups for 2024.
You know, I have another view on the House races, though, Jim. You're the expert, I'm not, but I read a prompter, so I think I qualify. So let me ask you this. 2 years ago, Republicans, even in light of Joe Biden's victory, picked up, 17 seats or something in the House, combined with whatever they pick up now and get likely the majority, and but we'll see. That's pretty impressive over 2 years. So a lot of the big gains were over 2 years. What do you make of that?
I think that's right, but the problem for Kevin McCarthy, he has now the worst job in Washington,
he
right?
Does, right.
Because he's going to have the smallest majority Republicans have ever had when they've been in the majority. And he's going to have to do really hard things.
And there'll be others who might want to compete for the job.
You are correct. And he's going to have
Scalise could?
He's going to have to whip debt limit votes. And so, what my smart Republicans are telling me today is he'll survive and he'll become the leader. But how long with a small majority can he hold that caucus together?
Republicans have a hard time. It's almost like in Britain with conservative leaders. Their own party turns on them. Right?
That's exactly
Look
right.
what happened to John Boehner and certainly Paul Ryan. So it might not be a job you covet, and maybe you shouldn't change the drape slide right away. So what do you envision?
Well, look, Boehner and Ryan had big majorities, and this is going to be a tiny majority. And so I don't think he makes it the whole 2 years, not because he's not a good leader, because I'm actually, think he is a pretty impressive guy. I just think that caucus is sort of at war with itself, and you're going to see that war happen in the Republican primary for president.
What if it's less of a war, though, Jim? The only thing that got me kind of thinking about this, knowing you would be coming, is there a sense that the Donald Trump part of the party is less influential or less cowed by Donald Trump? I'm not blaming some of the big Senate losses last night on him. I mean, J.D. Vance ended up winning in Ohio. I'm not minimizing it. But between those developments, some of his questionable candidates, and then his zinging, the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, Ron DeSanctimonious and all, which had a nice ring to it, whatever. But I'm just wondering if he overplayed his hand here. And now the talk that he's demanding it would be an act of disloyalty to challenge him, that people are just saying enough already. And that battle and the rising star of DeSantis might change the complexion of the Republican Party.
Well, here's what's true, and you and I can agree on this. He endorsed some candidates last night that lost in states they shouldn't have lost. Herschel Walker is a terrible candidate.
Yeah.
Dr. Oz was.
He might still pull out the Oz thing. That I don't know how you lose that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like had they got a normal candidate out of that primary, it would have been much more difficult.
So Mitch McConnell was right about that.
Mitch McConnell was right. I find myself associating with the senator from Kentucky. But here's the question. You still look at the Republican primary polling, and Trump is over 70%. So yes, the people you and I know in Washington and New York are furious, and they want to go after Trump, but the base still loves him. And so the question is, in a primary, can someone really beat Donald Trump?
Let me ask you a little bit about that. Sometimes it's based on not meeting expectations. We're both way too young to remember 1968, but what was famous that year is that Lyndon Johnson did win the New Hampshire primary that year, but barely. And this other guy named Eugene McCarthy almost stole his thunder. Shortly thereafter, Lyndon Johnson famously said, I do not want nor will I seek the presidential nomination. I'm wondering if it would take something like that for Donald Trump to say, no mas.
Yeah, we've never seen that from him. He's a no retreat, no surrender guy, which is how it got him here. But what is true is if I was advising him, and thank God I'm not, but if I was, he's got to go quick. He cannot allow this oxygen to move in the DeSantis.
So next week, he's going to speak, in 6 days?
Yep.
Presumably about a presidential run. Would that scare others off? I think in this environment, maybe not.
Well, DeSantis needs others in that race, right?
Yeah.
You can't just have a straight.
Well, we know Chris Christie's going to be in it. We know one way or the other Mike Pompeo will be in it.
Yep.
Regardless of whether he does, right?
Yeah, I assume so. But, we'll have to ask them. But here's the truth. Like, DeSantis does not want a one-on-one. Because the thing you and I can agree is Trump is an amazing counterpuncher. And if he can define, you remember what he did to Marco Rubio with little Marco and all that stuff.
But that's one thing I think. I'm not trying to act like a
No.
mature adult here. But that's one thing when you're facing 15 other guys who want the same job.
Yeah.
But you've had the job. You've been the president of the United States. You've been the leader of the free world. That dog don't hunt to sort of switch over to Bill Clinton. That's what I think.
Well, here's what
I'm very wrong, probably.
No. Here's what I think. I would not want to be in a debate with Donald Trump if I was in the Republican Party. Okay. Like, that is just not, ask some of those guys how much they enjoyed that experience.
That's a good point. Now, you were an advisor to Barack Obama. You were crucial to his getting reelected. I remember how dicey that looked for a while. People find that hard to believe, but it was. That first debate, it was looking shaky, but you got him through it. But Barack Obama is a different political animal, probably one of the most gifted, whatever you think of his views, of the last century. And I'm not meaning to disparage his former vice president, now the president, Joe Biden, but he's not that. And I'm wondering if Republicans go younger or want to go younger to a DeSantis type or any one of the number of other candidates, is that going to increase the pressure on Democrats to do the same? Or is it too risky to swap out a sitting president with an untested either vice president or other party luminary?
You're exactly right, and here's why. Here's why Democrats shouldn't switch. Since, except for 1988, the party in power at the end of when the president doesn't run for re-election loses the next election. The country likes to switch. So except for 1988 when Bush held it for the Republicans. If Democrats nominate anyone other than Joe Biden, I think we'd be an underdog in this election, especially with the economic problems. Joe Biden's already beat Donald Trump once. He's the best candidate to do it again. He can hold the party together, which he's proven repeatedly. And last night's proof of his strategy. So I think this whole talk.
Do you think it's proof of his strategy or Republicans just getting ahead of their skis?
Both. He was the one who said, look, we're going to pivot on democracy. And you and I have a bunch of friends in the media who went crazy on that democracy speech and said, what is he talking about? He woke up a whole bunch of Democrats who turned out in elections that last night no pollster had them turning in.
No.
Yeah. And so it really was a vindication last night of what Biden had been saying.
Who are your future stars, though? I know this incoming young governor to be of Maryland.
Yep.
Many call him the next Barack Obama. I don't know. There are plenty of young stars there, but who are they?
So people like Pete Buttigieg would be automatically there. The governors of California, Gavin Newsom would run the next moment, as was the governor of Colorado. There's a bunch of governors in this election.
So they're there.
They're there. I've talked to, I think last time I counted 29 people who want to run when Biden's done. But
how do you handle a debate like that?
Well,
right?
could you
have
imagine?
the
Well,
adult
remember
table?
last time?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
The adult table, the kids' table.
Yeah.
Finally, you and I were chatting during the break, Jim. I don't mean to pepper you with all these questions, but you can handle it.
I love
easily.
it. Let's have it.
This notion, and I've covered Wall Street for decades. I know I don't look that old, but I have. And I hear the gridlock talk a lot, Jim, and I get it. You know, the less spending that gets done. I mean, by the way, and that's happened on the Republicans and Democrats. No one has a license on fiscal prudence.
That's right.
Having said that, this notion that nothing gets done, and Wall Street likes that, there's a lot that has to get done, a lot of ticking time bombs that have to be addressed. So my naive read of that is, I think this time Wall Street's wrong about that. Be careful what you wish for, because there are some things that you like Wall Street that you want addressed. And gridlock, unless the parties have some miraculous come to Jesus moment, it's not happening.
I agree with you, and I think there's a pent-up demand inside both parties to actually get some stuff done. The infrastructure bill that passed bipartisanly that you and I have talked about last year, members were like, why did that take 10 years? Like, we should do that. And you and I were talking off break, like debt is one of my big issues. Both parties have responsibility to figure this out. Social Security, Medicare, you know, investing in some of the future here. We've got to do that, and that takes bipartisanship. And you know, when I was in the White House negotiating Obamacare for Barack Obama, I didn't take Barack Obama. I took Joe Biden, because both sides loved Joe Biden and thought he could cut a deal. And so the question is, and he did. And the question is, are we going to see that again the way he did it on infrastructure last year? And can he and Kevin McCarthy put aside the politics and cut a deal?
You know, my producer's going to kill me, but I always love having you on, so if you'll indulge me. The worst thing to happen to Joe Biden, I think, is Democrats taking the Senate and the House, because it was just an open runway. They had the run of the table, and it made a guy who was much more moderate in tone sort of cede to the progressive base of his party and do their bidding. And I never thought he was that. Now, you know him far, far better than I, but the one thing that might be productive or helpful for him, if it's just the House, maybe even if it includes the Senate, he's got divided government, it's not all one way, it might force him to moderate more, to pull a Bill Clinton or something, or to a less extent Barack Obama. What do you think?
Look, I think that's right in a way. What is true is that's where his heart is. He wants to be the guy cutting deals and get things done.
And he's good at it.
Yeah, that's right. And two, for his reelection prospects, let's just be completely political for a second. It was helpful to Bill Clinton in 96 and Barack Obama in 2012 to have the Republicans have the House. Why? Because they went too far on some stuff, and you could contrast and triangulate. And this morning, Kevin McCarthy said they're gonna pass a bill on anti-choice on the floor of the House, right after they lose all these seats, because they have to, because their members are screaming at them. Like, they're gonna walk right into what Joe Biden wants, and that kind of divided government is good for the incumbent.
Good for the incumbent, so good for Joe Biden.
Good for Joe Biden.
And good for his case to make that I should be your nominee in a couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think after last night, we're done with the whole primarying Joe Biden discussion.
Really? Okay. I always learn a lot. Jim, very good seeing you again.
Thanks for having me.
Horse is doing okay?
It's doing okay.
All right. Jim Messina, a former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, helped get Barack Obama reelected. I always tell people that and say, well, that was a given. Well, I covered it back then. It was not a given at the time. Just showing my age. I know I don't look it, but okay, I look it.